I'm Lisa Bunnies, and this is Mind Yourself. Welcome to our maiden voyage, our very first episode. I'm delighted that my first guest on the very first show is someone you're going to just love and that we can all learn from. Marc Allen is the founder, CEO, and publisher at New World Library, and he's the man who discovered Eckhart Tolle and introduced him to the world at large. But perhaps even more importantly, Marc has mastered the art of lazy success. He works when he wants to, he's never too busy, and yet he's wildly successful. I'll ask Marc to tell us how his life changed on his 30th birthday when he made a magical shift in his way of thinking. And in just a few minutes, we'll find out how he managed to pull that off. But speaking of the number 30, I have a magical story of my own to share before we get started. This very weekend is the 30-year anniversary of the day I met my soulmate and husband, Jeff. And it's a pretty amazing series of synchronicities. Talk about the universe lining up to fulfill a request. Dig this. Once upon a time, I was a divorced mother and touring stand-up comic. My daughters and I lived a kind of a strange and interesting life based out of a shitty little third-floor walk-up apartment in the suburbs of Chicago, during which time we traveled the country and met various celebrities. And you should ask my girls about the time they met Tim Allen during a tornado, or the time they hustled quarters from Willie Farrell to play video games in the hotel lobby. We'd moved to Chicago from Fort Wayne because there were plenty of comedy clubs in Chicago and I wouldn't have to travel as much to make a living, but I did have to travel still from time to time. And in the meantime, I spent many years after my divorce playing the field and making extra sure that if I ever ended up in a serious relationship again, it was going to be much more on balanced terms than my too young marriage was. I never wanted to get divorced again, so I wasn't getting serious with anyone until I knew it was right. So after 7 years, I was done playing the field. I said out loud, I'm done playing around. I'm finally open to attracting my perfect match, someone who will grow with me as I grow, and someone who will enjoy life the same way as I do. And most importantly, someone who won't try to change me into his version of the perfect little wifey. I had no idea back then that this would actually work. The law of attraction wasn't a thing back then. I was just a frustrated woman who'd had enough of the dating world's BS. I was ready to settle down and had spent enough time alone to know what I really wanted. So one day I just declared it out loud. I'm ready. Now, as a touring stand-up comic, I had myself booked up for months in advance, as is necessary in that kind of work. And one day, shortly after my declaration, I got a call from the club owner in Detroit, where I was supposed to perform the following week, that the club had burned down. My gig was canceled. So I got on the phone. I called every booking agent I knew, trying to fill this gap in my schedule. And finally, at the last minute, I landed a gig at a club in Virginia Beach. And the day before I was supposed to leave Chicago for the long drive there, I got a call from that booking agent who told me that Hurricane Hugo had wiped out the club. My gig was canceled. So panicking, I called the only place that I hadn't called the previous week, and this is the club where I started out years ago in my hometown. This was Snickers Comedy Bar, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I begged the club owner, who was a friend of mine, to just let me MC the show. Just do me a solid, even though he usually did that job. And I told him he wouldn't have to pay for my hotel. I'll just stay with my parents. And he felt sorry for me. So he agreed and let me do it. So I drove to Fort Wayne to, at least make a couple of bucks. And lo and behold, the feature act that week at Snickers was Jeff. And we both knew pretty immediately that our instant connection was something different. We were so comfortable together, like we'd known each other forever, like best friends. And he and I are now married and have been together 30 years this weekend. Now, I'm not saying that the universe created a fire or a hurricane just to bring us together, just to grant my wish. But there's no denying that I was a pinball at play in a bigger picture, and that this story goes way beyond the realm of coincidence. Don't you think? And if that story doesn't make you believe in magic, wait until you hear how my guest got his start. Let's go ahead and get started with part one of my interview with Marc Allen. Marc was a struggling poverty case throughout his 20s, and then he discovered the secrets that transformed his life and paved the way to becoming the president and publisher of New World Library, one of the most respected publishing houses in the world, which he co-founded with Shakti Gawain in 1977. Since then, Marc has shepherded some of the most influential nonfiction books of the past 30 years, including The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra, and of course, Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. He's the author of 18 books, including Visionary Business, The Millionaire Course, and The Greatest Secret of All, as well as being a prolific artist, having produced 7 albums of music. He also offers several online courses like The Magical Path, Success with Ease, and How to Get Happily Published. Marc, given all that, how on earth do you have time to be with us today?
I know it sounds like a lot, but I have plenty of time. I have no plans today. I don't do mornings. I don't do Mondays. I have tons of time. And people can't believe it sometimes. Remember years ago, some guy said, well, you're semi-retired. And I said, no, not at all. I just don't do mornings. I don't start anything till 1 o'clock. And I just work as long as I feel like it. But I wait to work or do anything until I really have energy for it. And then when I have energy for it, I guess I do quite a bit in a short period of time.
Well, you've obviously mastered this. So yeah, let's dig into this. But first, let's step into the Wayback Machine and start at the beginning. For those who haven't been around as long as you and I, who may not have had a copy of Creative Visualization on their bookshelf, would you tell us about how you and Shakti Gawain started out and how Creative Visualization tapped into the zeitgeist of the times?
We both called ourselves workshop junkies. We went to all these and that's where we met, at a workshop. In fact, Shakti had spent 2 years going around the world. She spent a year in India, and the whole time she had spent a total of $2,000 traveling around the entire world for 2 years. Now, in Italy, she worked a bit as an au pair and stuff, but it was mostly India that blew her mind. And that's when I met her, when she just returned from India in Berkeley. And so we went to these workshops and things, and then somebody hired us to actually assist him with a workshop. Shakti was supposed to cook, and I was supposed to just hand out stuff and be an assistant. And then 25 people came for this 4 or 5 day workshop from all over the country. And the guy got weirder and weirder, who was supposed to teach it, who I won't name, obviously. And finally, 10 minutes before, in the kitchen, he said, I can't handle this, and he walked out. And Shakti and I ended up teaching this 4 or 5 day workshop. And, we never would have had the courage to launch a workshop ourselves. I was 28, she was 26. But we did this workshop, and I kept writing, between sessions, because it went on for 4 or 5 days, I kept writing chunks of materials so they would remember what we just did. And we just threw in everything we'd ever experienced in our past. I did Zen meditation. I did all these Tibetan things. Shakti did these things from India and all these other workshop things, affirmations. We threw in everything we knew. And I ended up handing out about almost 60 pages of material. And literally, and I stapled them together, copied them. And literally, I looked up book and publish in a dictionary to see, does this mean I published a book? And it turns out, yeah, any bunch of pages with some kind of spine and staples is a book. And any number of copies that you make public is publishing. If you print 2 copies of your book and give one to your mother, you have technically published a book. So I took it to the local bookstore, and they turned me on to a local distributor. And he looked at the book and said, we can't distribute that. You have to typeset it, and it has to have a spine and a cover. Your cover is horrible. And so I did that. I had learned how to typeset. I typeset the book. We printed up a few, like 100 copies or something. And that it started the whole thing. It was called Reunion Tools for Transformation, our first little book. Then I wrote and self-published another. We were virtually just self-publishing. And then Shakti wrote, she took the same material from the workshop. My book, Reunion, sold about 12,000 copies over about 15 years. Shakti called it creative visualization, and it just started selling word of mouth. Word of mouth. We had no promotion. We were in a little apartment in Oakland. Our company was in the kitchen. The kitchen was a wreck. The kitchen table was our only desk in the office. And the book just started selling word of mouth. It was an amazing phenomenon. It was the perfect book for its time. And then Oprah picked it up, the holy grail of publishers and authors. And it just took off, and suddenly we had a company.
Such a great story. I love hearing that. So obviously you guys were actually using the materials in creative visualization to create this amazing company that is still around today. So well done.
We were, thank you.
Yeah.
And I kept affirming my unique contribution to humanity so far. Maybe it's not unique. I hope it won't be unique very soon, because I kept affirming an affirmation I got from a Unity Church minister named Catherine Ponder, whose books I read in the 70s. And she had this phrase, in an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive way. And sometimes adding even in its own perfect time for the highest good of all. So I did start affirming. I started affirming. Actually, it was the day I turned 30. I started affirming, I am now creating a successful publishing company in an easy and relaxed manner, a healthy and positive way, in its own perfect time for the highest good of all. I said that thousands of times in my early 30s, and it absolutely came true in reality. Before that, in my 20s, for a while, I'd had a rock band. In my early 20s, I'd been an actor, and I loved those hours. You never did a thing till 1 in the afternoon, and I've never been a morning person. So I started a company, and even though my father and so many people said, oh, you start your own business, you got to work 60 to 80 hours a week. And, and I decided the day I turned 30 to make an experiment, because I wanted to launch my own publishing company, but I did not want to work 60 to 80 hours a week. So that was my experiment. I said, I'm going to work when I feel like it. I don't do mornings. I don't do Mondays. I'm going to work when I feel like it. That's all. That's my experiment. I'm going to start a business. My doubts and fears said, won't work. Impossible. You got to work really hard. But I got around them I said to my doubts and fears, literally, I was pacing up and down on my 30th birthday saying, I want to start a company, but I only want to work when I feel like it. Doubts and fears said, impossible. I said, give me a year to try it. And if it doesn't work, I won't be any worse off than I am now. I had no job. I had no money. I had no family support. So even my doubts and fears had said, well, yeah, that's true. So that's how I got around them. So I went for this. I started a company, but I just worked when I felt like it. I slept as late as I wanted and relaxed whenever I wanted. I take naps. I'll sleep till 11 and take a nap in the afternoon quite often. It's very good for your health.
Absolutely. I just love this. This so fits in with the way I want to live my life. And this is your whole success with ease concept, right? Which is
Yes.
the exact opposite of that hardcore, you've got to bust your hump to make it attitude. So you had the audacity to dream of succeeding without working a 40-hour week. And I love how you even use the word lazy to describe the way you want your life to feel. So you mentioned first a second ago about how you had to get past these, your doubts and fears. And I think honestly that that's what probably stops most of us is that voice in our head going, you can't, what are you, nuts? So tell us, how did you break through that training that we all have, that you can't be lazy, you can't sleep until 1, you can't live a Jimmy Buffett lifestyle or a Mark Allen lifestyle and actually succeed?
Yes. As the older I get, the simpler I see it now. There's only 2 essential things. The first is to dare to dream and to really get that vision of what you want to be in the future. And then the other essential thing is overcoming the doubts and fears that inevitably arise for all of us. I do remember so vividly dealing with those doubts and fears that kept recurring. And for me, the most powerful thing was finding the right affirmation that completely contradicted what they were saying. And that whole concept of experiment, that worked for me. The whole idea of, I'm going to look at my life as an experiment. This is a worthwhile experiment. It took me, in fact, it was probably years later that I realized, oh, this experiment is working. And that means I have something very interesting to share with other people. You know, but at the time I was just all wanting to create some success, wanting to have some income doing what I loved. Throughout my 20s, I did what I loved. I was an actor at first, then I played music, and I was a Zen student. I tried a back to the land disastrous experiment. I did all these workshops and things, and then I had a rock band in my late 20s, but everything I did fell apart. I had no money whatsoever. So I did what I loved, but I had no way to make it work. And then the day I turned 30, I started visualizing this publishing company and affirming I was doing it in an easy and relaxed manner. And that started working. But yes, it's the doubts and fears. They said it won't work, it won't work. And I got around it saying, let me try it as an experiment. I'm going to start my own company, but work only when I feel like it. And it worked. It absolutely worked. It turns out that 40-hour a week or 50 is completely arbitrary. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no universal truth that one must work 40 or 50 hours a week. Right. This is totally arbitrary. So pick your amount for me, it was just following my energy. I wanted to just work when I felt like it and sleep when I felt like it and goof off when I felt like it. And that became my experiment. And it works. I find if some Mondays I'll have a tremendously lazy day. And then I'll wake up Tuesday. I usually sleep till about 11 and then get in the office by 1 or 2. But I have all this energy then. I notice the lazier I am on Monday, I usually get a 2-hour Thai massage now on Monday. That's really nice. The lazier I am, the more energy I have on Tuesday. I'm ready to go.
Okay. So you were talking about how when you were in your 20s, before you made this discovery when you were 30, it sounds almost like you were doing the same things that you were doing when you were 20. What was it that actually made it click into place and gain traction?
That is a good question. And I've often thought about that, looking back, okay, what really worked? Mm-hmm. And that actually is the source of even like 3 of my books. With the Millionaire Course, I tried to look at all the very practical things I did. And same with Visionary Business. And then even more recently on my book, The Magical Path, I realized I had done all this magic. When I was speaking about visionary business a lot, to business crowds, I would sometimes even say, if they were a fairly hip crowd, I'd say, it's really all magic. It's modern magic is what it is. It's whatever you call it, whatever you can do to get your subconscious mind aligned with your goals and working with you rather than working against you with doubts and fears. That's how simply I see it. It's making a goal and getting your heart and mind aligned with each other. Mm-hmm. So you're clearly focused on that goal, successful career, for instance. And then you keep your heart behind it. You keep your heart. You keep loving that goal. And then you keep dealing with all those doubts and fears, affirming, I am now creating the life of my dreams in an easy, relaxed manner. I really think that was it. It took me several years in my early 30s for that affirmation to really take hold. Mm-hmm. Okay. But looking back, I really think that's it. It's the power of the spoken word and written word I wrote my goals and dreams down on paper. I carried them around in my pocket. I still do that to this day. I make a list of affirmations. I carry it around in my pocket, and I just affirm. And it starts at the top with, in an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive. I won't show you all my goals, but um, in a healthy and positive way. And I started doing that the day I turned 30. And I really believe there's truth that in the beginning was the Word, and there's creative power in our words. And I heard T. Harv Eker one time, and I like, except he said affirmations don't work, which I thought was ridiculous because they have totally worked in my life. Though he's into declarations. Okay, that's the same as an affirmation.
Semantics.
Yeah, it's semantics. But he had this great image. He said, when we do ask for something, the whole universe, he says, it's like a cosmic warehouse, and it starts fulfilling our order. But then if our doubts and fears arise, it has to cancel the order. And I think that's how it works. Yeah. At first we start affirming something. Yes, the whole universe says yes to every thought. Our subconscious, I'm going to create success in this career. The whole universe in some mysterious way says yes and starts supporting it. But then if our next thought is, it's so hard to succeed. So few people succeed. The whole universe says, yes, it's hard to succeed for you. Yes, with that thought, it's true.
Right. Yeah. I keep coming back to this, that your main focus is that there's really nothing wrong with not being a type A personality. And that just resonates so much with me, because to live that way, it gives me panic attacks, literally. And it's not that I can't do it. It's not because I'm lazy. It's simply the way that my body reacts to stress. And the way that you're looking at it, it allows you to, it allows you to be who you really are. If that's who you really are, it allows your perfect life to flow the way it's supposed to. And if nothing else, the health benefits are such a relief. I don't have to keep a bottle of Xanax handy because I'm at peace.
Hardly ever even get a cold or flu or anything. And I've been in perfect health for I was in terrible health in college because I took way too much crystal methadone. It was ridiculous.
That'll do it.
Ever since then, I started meditating, and ever since college, I've been in perfect health. And yeah, I mean, all of us, we were educated, we were programmed, we were brainwashed from age 6 on, where we went to first grade and sat in a desk for 6 hours a day. We were programmed to work hard. That's how you succeed. And we all have that. And so, yeah, I'm a bit of a rebel. And the day I turned 30, I said, okay, this is my goal, to be lazy. I love being lazy. To me, that became a goal to overcome my type A tendencies that I was educated for, but which I always rebelled against a bit anyway. But I was a good student, and worked hard, did my homework. I worked a lot harder from age 10 to 20 than I did the rest of my life. And I didn't like it. I had a 40-hour-a-week job 2 summers when I was in high school, and I think that's inhumane. 40 hours a week, you don't have time for a life, right, in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And when you're working that hard, you don't really ever have time to access information that's coming to you, or ideas or inspirations, because you're so busy focusing on something else and somebody else's agenda. Yes. So it's I think it's very helpful. But now, let me change to a different track here. You were talking about you've been doing this your whole life, and you don't get sick anymore. And I'm wondering, is it ever too late to get started on this? Because I know a lot of people like in their 70s who still have unrealized hopes and dreams, who are afraid they'll go to their deathbed without it ever happening for them. And so is it possible to overcome a lifetime of doubts and fears and finally realize your dreams, even after all those years and all that programming?
Absolutely. I'm in my 70s now. It's never too late to start. I I say, if you're 90 and you decide you want to be, if your dream is to be a billionaire rock star and you don't know even how to play music, I'd say, go for it. Go for your dream. You might not achieve like billionaire rock star. There's not too many of those, but whatever happens along the way will be wonderful for you. Just going for your dream at any age, and even if it's a totally expansive dream, where if you're 90 when you're starting, depending on how many years you have left, you may not achieve the fullness of your dream, but every day will be a wonderful step along your journey. I would encourage a 90-year-old who wants to start a band but doesn't know how to play. I'd say, go for it. Get some lessons, learn to play, get your buddies together.
If nothing else, play the tambourine. You don't have
to whatever. Play. Yes. Play anything, record it, put it on the internet, see what happens.
Who knows? These days, anything can go viral and anything can succeed. So yeah, go for it.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about another one of your passions, and that is helping people learn how to get happily published. That's the name of one of your courses.
Yes.
What do you think of the state of publishing today? Because it sure ain't what it used to be.
Oh, no, it's definitely changed. And in many ways, it's changed for the better. I tell people now there is no excuse not to be published. No excuse. And it's funny, people look at the negative side of that saying, oh, then so many there's like over 1 million books published in the US a year now or something, plus all this online stuff. And I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. And I say anybody can be published, and I encourage everybody to publish. I wish my grandparents would have written memoirs. I wish my parents would have written memoirs. Wouldn't that have been wonderful to find out what their life experience was and to know more about them? So I encourage everybody to publish. It's never been easier or cheaper to self-publish. And who knows, there's a chance if you focus on it and really affirm it and make it a goal to sell some books, you might just do that successfully.
Right. What you're saying reminds me of something I read in one of Marianne Williamson's books. She was talking about how people who want to be an actor. I want to be an actor. I want to be an actor. And her point is, then be an actor. When you're waiting tables, act like a waiter.
Right.
Act like a person pumping gas. Act in everything that you do. You're an actor. What you really need to say is, I want to be a successful, famous actor. That's a different thing entirely. I want to be a writer. I want to publish books. Publish your book.
Right.
You're a writer.
I mean, I virtually just self-published a totally funky book and then made it look a little better. And then I realized, a self-publisher is really a publisher, and you have to do everything a publisher does. So yes, it's true. If you want to be a successful author, you have to not only write a good book that hopefully gets some kind of word of mouth. In other words, a book some people like, but then you have to promote that book, and you have to get a distribution system for that book. Now, with Amazon, that's very easy. You've got it all as an ebook. That's great. That's easy to do. And I've known some people that all they do is sell ebooks. But you can also then do print on demand, and you can get some distributors. So you have to do something like find out who distributes books in the publishing business, and you have to do some work. And basically, that's the whole business side of it. Writing is a creative art. Publishing is a business. And you have to do it or find someone to do it for you.
Right. Well, so how do you respond to writers who worry that their book isn't good enough and they're constantly polishing it to the point where they just never move forward? I'm guilty of this myself. How do you get past that point?
I remember years ago here, some writer said, no work is ever finished, it's just abandoned. At a certain time, you got to abandon it. You got to kick the kid out of the nest. You got to go on at a certain time. And you know that, or your friends will tell you. That's what I do often every week. I look at all kinds of manuscripts, and some of them I say, okay, this is complete. Others I say, this needs a lot of work. and a good editor or even a good friend or your own inner critic will tell you. A lot of people say, oh, I can't afford an editor. They're so expensive. Well, yeah, they are. So I say, okay, put your work aside for a couple weeks after you've finished, then come back to it and channel that inner critic of yours, channel your own inner editor and try to read it with fresh eyes, and you can become a good editor for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. That's really good advice. I've actually worked as a freelance editor, and I understand now why it's so expensive to hire an editor, because it's a tremendous amount of work. A good editor, somebody who actually cares about making your book the best it can be, goes beyond just looking for punctuation problems. They're looking for times when your writing slows down, or we don't need to get into that. But yeah, that's really something that I would advise too, is that put it away. And then when you come back to read it, if you go, what the hell is this? Well, maybe you should edit that a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Come back to read it and try to imagine you don't know yourself and you're another person. Bring that different part of your brain in and pretend you're reading it fresh and you're just someone that found it in a bookstore or online. Okay, what's your reaction?
Right.
I can kind of do that.
Yeah. And the more of that you do yourself, the less it's going to cost you when you actually do hire an editor, because the majority of the work is already done and they are basically there just crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
Right, right. And of course, if your book is good enough, if you can find a publisher, then the publisher will pay for the editing.
Right.
The publisher does. Good publishers do editing. There's so much confusion about publishing I've been dealing with, because there are three different types of publishers. There are publishers that so many people find that just say, oh, they'll publish anything, but they'll charge the author. And that's called vanity publishing. But now and that's not good, because those vanity publishers don't really have distribution. They don't sell books. They make their money off the authors. So except in cases of, I've known like old people that just wanted to get copies of their book out to their families, and then that's fine. They'll do that. But if you want to sell books, vanity is not the way to go. But there is a new hybrid publishing, they call it, that is charging the author some money. Like She Writes is a good example, I think, or there's a bunch of them now. I think Barrett Kohler, the business book publishing company, does this now. A bunch of them do now. They're called hybrids. They charge the author something, but then they match it or do whatever they do. But then they also have sales and distribution, and they make money off book sales. That's what you want. That's the hybrid publisher. They do charge the authors something up front. Then the traditional good publishers like us are those publishers. They'll take your book, they'll give you an advance, you know, and it doesn't cost you a dime. They'll edit, we'll edit in-house at our own expense, which often, I mean, literally it takes 40, 50, 60, 100 hours of an editor's time to really edit some of the books. So the publisher's putting up substantial money, but we've got distribution and sales, and we promote and on the business end really try to make it work. So those are the three types of authors. I mean, of publishers. So if you can get a good traditional publisher, great. If not, the hybrid's an option. And if not, just total self-publishing is an option. Do it yourself. Just get it, on Amazon, find some print on demand, and go for it.
Okay. So now, how important is it to have a platform? Because whether you're self-published or not, that's a big thing that agents, publishing companies are sort of demanding. You got to have a platform, because even if the publishing company is doing some marketing, you really still do have to market yourself.
That's true. It used to be in the beginning, we just publish anything we liked. Now we sit down with our acquisitions committee, the editors pitch books that have come in that they like, and the marketing people say, okay, what's the author's platform? It's true. Now there are exceptions, like Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. He had zero platform. He did nothing online. He taught a few little classes in but that's all he'd done. But the book was so great that we had to publish. I didn't care. We didn't care that he had no platform whatsoever. The book was so incredible, we published it. But that is the exception.
And on that note, we'll go ahead and end part 1 of my interview with Marc. Tune in next week, same bat time, same bat station, for part 2, in which Marc tells us about the magical path, which he calls Harry Potter for grown-ups. Meantime, you can check out Marc's website at marcallen.com. Also, mark your calendars for my upcoming guests, karmic astrologer Marguerite Manning and Shakti mystic Raja Chowdhury. Send in your questions for Marguerite and Raja in advance by Friday, September 27th, and then watch their interviews to see if your questions get asked and answered. You can find information about Marguerite and Raja in the links below. So, until next week, see you then. Have a great week, everyone.